Thank you for the introduction, and thanks to the GRDC and ORM for the invitation to be here today. Yes, I'm Natasha Searle, and I've been working for Rural Directions for almost 9 years, and been in Dubbo for the last 18 months after moving back from South Australia. Originally grew up at Narromine, so it's nice to be back in New South Wales and still working with the same team. So before we get underway with the session today, I've been asked to talk about creating employers of choice. So just to get a feel for who I've got in the room, if you're a farmer and you employ, could you please put your hand up? Keep your hand up if that includes family and non-family labour. If you didn't put your hand up and you employ family labour, add your hand. Okay, so this presentation's around family and non-family labour. So when I talk about employees, I'm talking about our team. So everyone that we've got in our business team on farm. The session that we're covering today, so as a bit of context for today's session, we're looking at how family and non-family labour are more motivated by more than just their wages. So key things such as safety and wellbeing, flexible work conditions and a great business team and culture, plus good communication and leadership are all high on their needs. So that's sort of context where we're talking about our team and how that fits into this session today. So I'm going to talk to you about what is an employer of choice, best practice human resource management for attraction and retention, how the principles of best practice human resource management link to profitability and productivity, and some steps to effectively resource your business for the future if you do need to consider employment. So my paper's on page 11 to 15, so there's some room there if you wanted to jot down any notes or actions, questions. You'll find that in your proceedings. What is an employer of choice? Imagine walking into a farm business that's an employer of choice. What do you see? It might be your business that you think of, it might be another business, or I'll put it out to you because we've only got a little group here. What's something you see?
Happy staff, satisfied staff.
Yeah, sure. Happy, satisfied staff.
High level of communication between employee and employer and bosses.
Yep, good levels of communication. Okay. Both those things. So we see an employer of choice as a business that leads its team to potential, has clear practices which demonstrate effective recruitment, engagement and retention, and achieves the farm productivity and profitability goals. So that's sort of what we're thinking about, the bigger picture of what is an employer of choice. A few years ago, with a group of our clients in South Australia, that we've been doing benchmarking with this one particular group for probably about 15 years now. So we've got a really good relationship with them. They all employ family and non-family labour. We've been working with them for a long time, so it could be, some of it could be a little bit biased, but we're working with them specifically around some labour management stuff, and surveyed them to find out from the employers team what those employees saw as an employer of choice. Some of the things that they said was that an employer of choice is an employer who provides staff with good working conditions and good learning opportunities, an employer who is fair and that you develop a strong working relationship with, a workplace where I want to be, an employer who values my opinion, an employer of which I want to commit myself 100% to, an employer who retains people even when they're offered attractive proposals from another business. They want to stay. Then we asked them about what is it that they value at their current workplace. So they value an enjoyable workplace that's friendly with a variation of jobs and opinions that are appreciated, a safe workplace that has good employee relations, opportunities to learn new skills, being able to communicate well with my employer and other staff, the type of work, friendly workers and job opportunities, great team of people, good support for all members of the business, both employees and owners, and opinions are valued and appreciated, good working environment, good employers and a good working team, an adjustable roster, hard work, and a stable workplace with a good work ethic. So you can start to sort of see these, it's about an environment that's been created in these businesses that the employees are valuing. This is a really interesting sort of graph that looks at the factors when they're rated in terms of importance. What are the key things that are essential through to not so important for employees? So as you can see on the left-hand side, we've got the bars, the green bars are sort of the greater over the left, and then they reduce to the right. On the left-hand side, we have things like flexible work conditions, leadership, safety and communication as being those most important factors for an employee. To over here on the right-hand side, the red pops up, which means not so important, is salary and remuneration packages. Does this surprise us much? Okay, so what we've got here is an environment that we're creating. We're providing an attractive environment for our staff. Salary and remuneration is an expectation. So that's essentially a maintenance factor. We need to pay our staff. You know, for a fair day's work, fair day's pay. So I guess one of the little messages out of this is, as managers and leaders of our business, we want to not fall into a trap of thinking that it might take less management effort to just raise wages, as opposed to thinking about what it is in our business that we might need to adjust or reevaluate to redesign for job satisfaction. So people in the farm business today, it's true that we see that farm businesses are becoming more complex, so the need for skilled people is increasing. Margins are tighter, so efficiencies of operations and labour is important. We're seeing farms employing an increased number of non-family employees. We see increased use of contractors or seasonal labour. We're also seeing the corporatisation or professionalisation of farms, and that includes the family farm. The workforce available to us is educated. And on the family farm, we're seeing changing expectations of our young people. So they're looking for involvement, responsibility, communication, which isn't that unrealistic, but it's there. But sometimes we do hear things like, and this is what we hear from our clients from time to time, but it's really hard to find good staff in our areas. And it's hard to find good staff, and they focus on the staff. Or the mines have consumed all the available labour, so focusing on where the other industries are maybe competing with us. People and labour is one of our biggest challenges as a business, and that's becoming more and more common with work that we do. So, while we understand and we hear these things, and we know that finding people that have a good strategic fit in a regional area can be challenging, it's important for farm business managers, so leaders of our business, to take a critical look at our own management and what it is that we have control over in regards to the attraction and retention of labour. So essentially, if a business is struggling to retain staff, it's likely to struggle to attract them as well. An employer of choice takes ownership of their management to position themselves for effectively resourcing their business. So this moves us to the role of best practice human resource management, and in today's environment I think it's never been more important. So I've got 8 key principles that I'll work through with you that are important steps when we start to hear challenges about how we resource the business. We need to take that step back and go, well, what are we actually covering of these 8 things? Are we covering them well? So the first is a clear vision and business strategy. So strategic planning is what we're talking about here, so at that strategic level, and then we've got our operational plans. So if a business, it's important to have that clear vision and strategy which provides the roadmap for our farm business, and it outlines your goals. It allows a business to move from intuitive business planning to more formalised planning, which gives you a communication tool for your team. And this allows them to understand your direction from year to year, to understand why they're doing what they're doing from day to day or week to week. So the operational plans are just as important, and because that's what we're using to implement the strategy. But being clear on what that overarching strategy is a key one to be able to work effectively with our team. Number 2 is that we have a happy and productive work culture that's defined and understood. So this means that we've defined what those key values are in our business that are important to us, and they're also demonstrated by the business owners. So essentially what we are thinking about here, if we were bringing new people in, employ on attitude and train on skills. So we can train people to do what we need them to do. Might get robotics in the next 20 odd years, but we've got to find someone that has the right attitude and that fits in with our culture. So essentially what we do find is that you could have a brilliant strategy. So think about culture in footy teams or sporting clubs. That's often where culture gets thrown around. They've got the same sort of strategy. They bring a team together to play the sport, to win the game. We could have the same business strategy, but the culture is what sets us apart and creates that competitive differentiation. So being able to define that culture and really live that in our business team creates a focus for the team. They're all those things that we were talking about at the start, such as communication, a happy work environment, getting along with everyone, having input, and it also helps to provide resilience during tough times. So that when the season does, turn the wrong way on us, and it does become a bit tougher and things become a bit stretched, if we've got a good culture, that's the gel that's or the glue that holds the team together. The third one is around implementing practical human resource management systems and processes. So there's lots of different things that we could talk about here, but I guess essentially it's about them being practical and picking those top things that will help you to manage that resource. So the first one is around having an organisation structure. So if you've undertaken any business planning or anything like that, you might have put together an organisation structure. That's your tool to identify where the gaps are in the business and to also demonstrate the roles and responsibilities. So being able to do that and look at what's our organisation structure look like now can highlight some gaps or opportunities, and then what do we want it to look like in the future. This then allows us to develop job descriptions for each of our staff. And so remember when I said at the start about family and non-family employees, we apply the same process. So we have job descriptions for all members of our business. The other aspect of some of these people systems is around having recruitment policies that assist you in that review and compliance of employment legislation and ensuring that you're following the award and the national employment standards. So having some policy around that to help you, ensure that you're on top of those aspects are really useful, because if you are recruiting, it is a big cost to the business and more costly when it goes wrong. So having sort of those systems in place can help you manage that. Remuneration packaging that's fair and compliant. So having a process in place that allows you to annually review and benchmark your remuneration packages to ensure they're compliant with the award, but also just from a business perspective that you're covering off on those peak periods which often blow out that extra time that people are working during the season. And finally, standard operating procedures. So we've probably heard of SOPs, and they often get talked about with the link to WHS, so work health and safety. But other areas that can really support your team and give them that support to develop their skills, but also confidence in undertaking their tasks for you, is around some of these technical things that you might only do once a season. So helping with unpacking some of those or infrequent or more risky tasks or machinery that people are operating. So the fourth one principle is around communication. Essentially this is to do with feedback and just starting the conversations. And Pip's session next will be all on communication, so she'll cover that further. But basically what we're looking at here is that employees are empowered and engaged when the communication is right. So that's looking at opportunities that you can have to initiate informal but also formal communication processes. So this could be from weekly meetings, sort of workshop meetings or in the lunchroom, through to performance reviews, and most of you would have completed sowing perhaps. So what's happening post sowing to review how that went before things get busy into the next on-farm activity. What worked well, what didn't work well, and it allows that two-way communication. And the other thing that I find really useful is, don't underestimate the value of jumping in the ute and heading up the paddock to do something and just checking in with that family member or that non-family employee, how are things going, and gets that discussion going, because we all are quite happy to look at the road ahead of us and chat. It happens a lot more easily than sitting across the table from each other. Number 5 is to communicate. Further to communication is around having transparent and agreed decision-making processes. So in this way, I'm talking specifically around policy development. So our decision-making on farm is often intuitive, so it's not written down, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't been well considered. So we can have some very, very good intuitive farm business managers, but where we get the complexity or where it gets a bit tougher is if there's a business shock or where the business has some growth and we start bringing in more teams, and we just can't continue to manage in that way. So formalising policy and getting things written down in a practical, straightforward manner helps with that communication and getting everyone on the same page. So essentially policy influences behaviour. So thinking about things that you might have common questions about or discussions, it could end up being a difficult conversation to sort of say, no, this is why we're not replacing the tractor again this year. Helping them understand that big picture about how it fits can help with managing conflict. So some policies that might be in place might be around your marketing of your grain or machinery replacement, ute replacement, off-farm investment, your profit distribution or how you're using profit, and debt reduction, through to some of the employee-related ones, which might be a policy around smoking or your annual leave policies and when and how annual leave can be taken. Record keeping, so timesheets and what your expectations are. So some simple systems can really help with ensuring that you don't have to be, repeating this stuff all the time, and it allows you to be consistent across the team. Employers are also good at helping you develop these things. So involving them in that collaborative development of policy can bring in that new thinking, and it also just prevents us from going down that universal strategy, so it keeps it business focused. Ensuring our team's well resourced with good tools, equipment and support is really important. So before we focus on, a team member doesn't seem to be doing this or that we're after, have we actually provided them with all the opportunities through good training, support, what was our role in that? So looking at their role, your role, as a leader, to ensure that they've got all the tools that they need in their toolbox to be able to undertake their role. The 7th principle that we're talking about is about regular check-ins and monitoring to ensure that team maintenance. So we can't manage what we don't measure. So feedback reporting processes, performance reviews are all methods of checking in. Also sharing how you're tracking from an overall productivity perspective. So how is the business performing? Are we on track budget versus actuals, and involving them in that discussion so they understand why we're doing what we're doing. Essentially, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So this is key to ensuring that your team is on track and the business is on track. An important aspect of farming business is succession, and focusing more here on the management succession as opposed to succession in regards to transfer of ownership and that kind of thing. So management succession considers the capability development of the future, and allowing that transition from one generation to the next. By working through those previous principles and putting those sorts of things in place will make that management transition a lot easier because you've involved the team members. I think this little image from Red Tractor Designs is a good one to sum that up. So tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, and involve me, I will learn. So that's what we're focusing on here. Involving your team will mean that they understand why it is that you're doing and really commit themselves to your business, which helps overall with that retention aspect. So how do these best practice human resource management principles link to productivity and profitability? Good management is identified as a profit driver, and it's required to optimise our gross margins and develop and undertake a low-cost business. This morning in the introduction, Phil showed those two pie graphs and talked about the average and the top 20% in some of the data from Victoria. So remember, the average was retaining about 11% of profit before tax, and the top 20% was around that 28%. So what is it that those businesses are doing differently to help them achieve that? So that's where some of the work that we've been doing at Rural Directions for the GRDC, and Simon's talking about aspects of this project in this session as well, is looking at the integration of technical data and profit drivers for informed decisions. And the national team has identified 4 key profit drivers. So these being gross margin optimisation, a low-cost business model, people and management, and risk management. So people and management's identified as one of these key levers for our business. So based on this, it's how we interact and how those 4 profit drivers work is what drives our long-term financial performance of our business. And what if it is actually only people and management profit driver that's showing that difference in that profitability? So what is it that we can do to help bring that back in line? So as a little reflection, how would you currently describe the impact of the people and management profit driver for your business? As part of this project, Rural Directions was looking at the South Australia and benchmarking the data there, and part of looking at the people and management profit driver was to identify what the characteristics were of those top 20% of farm managers and what was it that drove their businesses. So in regards to these 6 characteristics, the first one was having a systems focus. So if we're looking at, we've got these HR principles that we can implement, and then what are the actual characteristics of good performing farm managers? If we can combine the 2 of those, we're sort of setting ourselves up for that good people management. So high performing farm managers have a systems focus. So they've got continual refinement of their chosen production system, and they have systematised patterns of work. They also take a helicopter view when under pressure, so they climb to the top of the silo, and they're able to look out and think about the big picture. What's the long-term implications of decisions? How does this fit with our long-term objective? If there's a speed bump within the season, not getting too caught on that, but thinking about what's the implications for the bigger picture. These managers internalise and take responsibility for key decisions. So you see these people working above the line. They take responsibility, ownership, and they're accountable, but they also take responsibility for their decision making. So they take a interdependent approach, so they're happy to collaborate, but they're very specific that they make the decisions and don't put that responsibility on others. So you can see some of these characteristics are really valuable if you're trying to lead a team, and what your employees are seeing and taking on from that. You'll have a really engaged team if they can see and they're feeling like these things are under control. These sorts of managers also focus energy on the things that are within their control, so they don't overinvest on what they can only be concerned about or what they can influence. They know where they can intercept and take control back over. They also have superior implementation ability. So one of the key things out of the project was that we found that there isn't really a knowledge gap. Knowledge is free flowing, and there's lots of technical information available from the industry. The industry's done a really great job at providing this knowledge to us, but it's more how things implemented. And this applies for some of this HR management stuff as well. We know what we should be doing, but is it actually happening? So these top 20% of managers they know their target and they're consistently meeting it. And then we see strong observation skills with an active radar for trends. So they're observing on what's going on around them. Given the influence that the people and management profit driver has on business performance, what then are the opportunities for your business to enhance your human resource management? One way of doing this is to work through a SWOT process. So this is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So essentially asking yourself, well, what is our HR strategy? And using this as a process to look at what's working well or what could be improved. Going through this as an exercise with your team, might be with your management team, and then you might also work through it with your employees as well, can help you identify what those the low-hanging fruit is. So what might be the strategic issues that pop out that you need to follow up urgently to be able to refine your HR strategy. Once Once you've got you've worked through your HR strategy and you've identified some of those opportunities, some of the things that you might want to improve upon. You might also identify during that process that we actually need to employ someone, and what's the first step to effectively doing that? So I've got planning as the first step. So essentially the success of a recruitment campaigns reliant on your preparation. With working with our clients on recruitment is, we always say start with the end in mind and then we work back. So we've got to be thinking about, have we got all our things in order before we actually head to the market and start promoting our business for a position. So we've explored things like best practice HR principles earlier in the presentation. We've looked at some characteristics of high-performing farm managers and a way of reviewing your HR strategy. So this little section now is just looking at what these steps might be in order to be able to go out to the market and look to attract people to your business. So sometimes, clients will come to us and say, oh, we've thrown it in the paper and we'll just see what comes out of the woodwork. Or they might be not really clear on what they're after, but they say, oh, but we just need someone. But you say, well, but what is it that you're after? Or we just need someone. So these are the things that we've got to become more skilled at to be really clear on what it is that we're after for our business and where are the gaps. So to do this, we look at where are we now. So that's where the SWOT comes in. That's essentially a situational analysis tool. Look at our current workload. What are the average hours worked per person per week? Do we actually know this? Have we got timesheets? Do we understand when we've got our peak periods and our quieter periods and how that fits? What's the productivity look like per FTE? Do we actually need someone, or is it about refining what we're already doing and getting better utilisation out of the people that we've got? What is our, productivity per FTE per hectare? Do we know? Are we seeking a better work-life balance? Are there gaps in our management? Once we've worked through that sort of situational analysis, we can look at what are the reasons for employing. So it could be through succession, an employee leaving, looking at our ageing team and what we might need to do from a management succession point of view. We might have increasing workloads. It may be that the business is looking to be able to capitalise on other opportunities, so we need to move some people around within the business to allow some people to work more on the business and bring someone in to work in the business and do more of the operational. And it might be around work-life balance for yourself or other members of your team. We move to implementation. So the organisation structure that I talked about earlier, what is our organisation structure now and what does it look like in the future? Are there opportunities to move people around and advance them through the business and create some sort of career paths essentially? Or is it just a specific role that we need to bring in somebody as a farm operations assistant because where our business has got to and we've got the work available? Being clear on our strategy and goals that we talked about earlier as well, plus looking at the compliance and safety and employment employment legislation and safety legislation. So understanding the award. So for farming, it's the Pastoral Award for 2010, and knowing that market and salary packaging to allow for budget discussions to work out, well, what is it? what does the market expect. Developing a job description, applying a universal strategy there. So looking at each specific role in the business and really unpacking that. So sometimes we hear things like, oh, we want them to be able to drive the tractor, and then they'll probably do a bit of spraying, but I probably want to keep doing the spraying. And then at harvest time, they'll run the chaser bin, and after harvest, I'll probably shift some grain if they've got a truck licence. Probably be good if they had a truck licence actually. And then we say, okay, that's great. We're starting to sort of get a bit of a picture, but what does this actually look like in your business? And you sort of get this sort of bit of a blank look. So it's really important that we take it and we unpack it from that next level to go, well, what does this specifically look like in your business? Because it will look different to the neighbours. And that's unpacking the roles so that once you've got somebody on board, you can use that as a tool to manage that staff member as well, and then identify, is there some training required? Are they right to go? What else could we get them to work on? Timeline, that's in regards to a recruitment process. So essentially, you need to be giving yourself 6 to 8 weeks to be able to implement a recruitment process from point of advertising through to induction, and in some cases it's longer. So if you're actually appointing somebody who's already in a full-time role and they have been for a few years, you've got to factor in that they're likely to need to give their 4 weeks notice. So you've got that advertising period, and then you're shortlisting, interviewing, so it can actually take a while. So thinking about when you want that person to start and then working back is really important, because there's no point thinking 4 weeks out of start of harvest, oh, we really are going to need someone, I think, which I know is really tricky, because from a casual seasonal point of view, you might not know until it gets that little bit closer, when you know how things are going to go. But if you're looking for full-time employment, giving yourself plenty of time and doing that prep work, that job description work, really pays off. The promotion and advertising aspect is about understanding what's used in your local area. So there's no hard and fast sort of silver bullet, unfortunately, about which way to go is more appropriate. Putting things in the local paper gets your casual browser that might be looking for an opportunity and go, oh, actually, yeah, that might, they're an employer of choice. I might follow that up, as opposed to putting something on Seek, which is where your active job searches are. So you sort of got to think about maybe a combination of strategies there. Shortlisting and interviewing. So my key message around this is that this process is all to do with your job description and tailoring it to the purpose and the roles and your expectations of that role. And the more specific you are during that process, and the more effort you put into that process in recruiting someone, will ensure that you've got someone that has the best strategic fit for your business. And finally, induction, the important aspect about successfully onboarding your team member into your business and into your culture and strategy and your way of operating. So our key take-home messages here are that people are one of our most valuable resources available to us in our farming business. High-performing farm businesses and employers of choice take a professional approach to their human resource management for family and non-family labour. So they take the same approach regardless of who they are, what their surname is, and how they fit in that business. It's a whole of business approach. An employer of choice demonstrates effective employee recruitment, engagement and retention, while also being able to achieve their business productivity and profitability goals. When resourcing your business, start with the end in mind. The success of your recruitment strategy is reliant on your preparation and implementation. And finally, a clear vision and strategy, a defined culture, clearly communicated expectations, transparent decision-making processes, effective resourcing, and an attitude of continuous improvement are all key to employee attraction and retention. So a couple of questions for you. How can you ensure employment works for you? And what's your role in ensuring its success? And that's all. Thank you.